everyone, I am here today with another reading wrap up for you, and today I have got 5 really great books to get into. So first of all, the first book I want to talk about is a book that I listened to on audiobook, and that is Elizabeth is Missing by Emma Healy. I've been meaning to read this book for such a long time, so I was so excited to finally get around to it, and it didn't disappoint. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And this is a sort of contemporary mystery novel that actually focuses on an age group that you don't get to read about very often, which is what makes it so unique and wonderful. It focuses on a lady called Maud who can't find her best friend Elizabeth. She doesn't know where she's gone. Now, Maud is a very confused elderly lady, and so she makes for a very unreliable narrator. And so at times you can't work out whether maybe something has happened to Elizabeth and Maud knows and she's forgotten, or whether people need to start actually taking Maud seriously, because she does tell her daughter that Elizabeth is missing, and her daughter will not have any of it. She does try telling other people as she goes out searching for Elizabeth. Again, they don't really take her seriously. And it's really sad, because we can all we've all been in this situation, or a lot of us have been in the situation where you are talking to an elderly person and they are really confused, and you don't know whether they have just got themselves into such a muddle or whether there is anything else sort of behind this. And that's how you feel with Maud. You're like, is Elizabeth dead? Has something happened to Elizabeth? Has Maud totally forgotten that Elizabeth is dead? Or has something happened to Elizabeth that's malicious? Or has she got herself into trouble? And it's such a heart-wrenching read at times. You feel so many different feelings for Maud, and at the same time the author has done a fantastic job at showing how difficult it is for relatives of elderly and confused people too. So, for example, Maud's daughter really struggles to keep her patience some of the times, just because Maud is that much hard work. And it was really great to see that it isn't all sugar-coated. This novel really sort of shows you deeper into this sort of situation, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I can highly recommend it to anyone who thinks that they may enjoy this novel. And the ending didn't disappoint either. I loved the mystery aspect too, as I do love my mysteries, and that worked really well too. I'd say the only reason why I gave it 4 stars rather than 5 is because with listening to the audiobook I actually found it a little bit confusing at times. I feel like if I'd been reading the physical copy I'd have been absolutely fine, and this could possibly even have been a 5-star read. So highly recommend. The next book I want to talk to you about is the first book in the series of Unfortunate Events series by Lemony Snicket, The Bad Beginning, and I have never read these books before. I don't know what I did with my childhood other than read Harry Potter and all the typical usual stuff, but it certainly wasn't read this. So a friend got me into these, made me read them, pick them up, and I've been having a blast reading them. I've been spreading them out. Originally I was going to read one after another literally, but I've been spreading them out and reading other books between them, and I'm loving them. The first book I actually gave 4 stars to. I thought that it was a fantastic intro to the series. Reading it as an adult was a really interesting experience, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed sort of experiencing something that many people probably hold sort of dear to their hearts for the first time, in the same way that I'd be jealous of someone starting Harry Potter for the first time. And I thought that it was just great to learn about the awful situation that the children find themselves in. I was totally into it. I felt like a child again, in all honesty. I was getting that into it with the hatred of Olaf and being on the children's side and just wanting to know what happened next. And it was such a page turner, and it always makes you feel accomplished when you can finish a book really quickly. And obviously this was a quick read, and I had such a brilliant time reading it. And if you've never picked up this series either, I highly recommend it. It's a bit miserable, but it's got to be read. It's got to be done. So then the next book I want to talk about is the second book in the series, which is called The Reptile Room, again by Lemony Snicket. And I enjoyed this one so much more than the first book, which is why I had to give this one 5 stars. I mean, the first book was already doing well at 4 stars, but this one was just a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved Uncle Monty. I loved learning about the snakes. I think it helps that I really love snakes, and so reading this book I was like, oh my goodness, I can't get enough of actually, like, I wanted to live there, and I wanted to befriend Uncle Monty, and I wanted to handle the snakes, and I felt like the children were genuinely happy for a bit as well, and that was just such a wonderful thing. Obviously things take a turn for the worse, as this is a series of unfortunate events, but I felt like this was just one of my favourite reads by far this year. It blew me away with happiness and sadness all in one, and I highly recommend it. So the next book I want to talk about is a compilation of stories, Summer Days and Summer Nights, 12 Love Stories, and it's edited by Stephanie Perkins, and I'm sure you've seen this book floating around BookTuber a couple of months ago. I'm just late with my wrap up. And basically, this is a very mixed bag of stories, as many compilations are. I received this book from the publisher via NetGalley in return for an honest review, and I gave it 4 stars. And I deliberated over the rating for a while because it's really difficult with compilations, because on the one hand there were some stories in there that I absolutely loved. To pull one out of the hat right now, Veronica Roth's story made me cry like a little baby. I can't remember ever crying to that extent. I couldn't even see to read anymore. I was just a mess. And I enjoyed every single second of it. And there were a few others in there that, again, I just absolutely loved, although they didn't make me cry. I absolutely loved them. But then, as ever, there were a few duds in there, and they made me struggle to get through the book. And so it's always really difficult deciding what to rate. However, in this case, I think that there was more stories in there that I enjoyed than that I didn't, so I went for a 4 stars. And if you enjoy contemporary novels, if you enjoy some of the typical YA authors, then I really think that you should pick this book up, and you don't even need to pick up in summer, because to be honest, the summer vibe wasn't always there in all the stories. I feel like you could read this book any time of year and enjoy it for what it is, and I'm pretty sure that there's a story in there for everyone. There'll be some that you like, there'll be some that you don't, and everyone will have a great time with at least one of the stories. And so the final book I want to talk to you about in this wrap up is another graphic novel, and this one is called Golem by Lorenzo Cecotti. This is another graphic novel that I got from the publisher via NetGalley in return for an honest review, and this one I gave 4 stars to. It has a science fiction feel to it, and it's set in a future, like, kind of dystopian Italy. And I think the most shocking thing about this one for me was that you can see some of our future, like, you can see some of our society now in that future, and it's quite disturbing because you could see how things could develop in that way. And that's always a really scary thing for me to read, and something that I find really interesting too. I must say as well that the art in this book was just absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal. It stood out, and it was just so beautiful. It was just a couple of 100 pages of pure beauty, and it was a pleasure to read, honestly, and a pleasure to look at, and I found myself just sort of staring at the pages longer than I should, just because the art was just so phenomenal. I will say though that this book was originally published in Italian, and this was a translated version to English, and in a few places the translator had maybe not achieved quite the correct wording, and it just felt a little awkward in places. It didn't happen often, don't get me wrong, but it is something to think about. It does pull you out of the story a little bit when the word doesn't quite fit the situation. But overall, a fantastic read, and again, I highly recommend it if you are looking for a graphic novel that's a little bit different and a little bit more daring and out there. So I finally finished this week's wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see other book reviews and bookish content from me, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye!